Hello, everybody. It is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another video over here on That's Comical. And if you are watching and it happens to be a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. I am very excited to be here today, especially because of the fact that it is July 26th, 2024, the start of the Paris Olympic Games. So go Team USA, and for Lindsay over there, go Team Canada. I hope you guys get a couple of medals as well. But anyway, of course, we are here for a different celebration. We are here again to talk about Batman, but we are finally roping in, because it has been too long since we celebrated the second big pop culture anniversary. And that, of course, is the 40th anniversary of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So we are actually going to let worlds collide tonight, and it is going to be a blast. So, of course, Lindsay, I already said hello to you, and Cammie is here. Cammie, I know that you're doing well today, I hope?
I am. Hopefully, I won't have any computer issues this time. Yeah, and I thought we were here to celebrate me because tomorrow's my birthday, but it's cool.
No, you know something? I feel like such an idiot. I completely forgot to call my friend Dan. It's his birthday today. That's what happens when your daughter's home with you. You completely forget everything. But yeah, I was going to wish you a happy birthday tomorrow because you share it with my friend Alex.
I do. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just joshing you. No, I'm having a good day. It's been a rough month for me, pet-wise, but otherwise I'm here to enjoy some comic nostalgia with y'all.
In the words of the great comedic troupe Monty Python, and now for something completely different. We are not going to be reviewing a comic book today. Rather, we're going to be discussing some comic book movies that revolve around Batman and the Ninja Turtles. We're going to do it in a very interesting fashion. We're going to go separate, and then we're going to unite them as one. So I really hope that you both are excited for a great conversation today.
Always.
So it's also a very interesting thing to note that today is San Diego Comic-Con, and the news in regards to all things comics are dropping like flies every 5 seconds. So it's been a fun day, I got to admit. But we're going to start today by discussing one of three movies that celebrate these two very popular franchises. Batman, everybody knows how iconic this character is, and the Ninja Turtles, it is incredible to think that two men were thinking up the craziest and stupidest idea for a comic book, and it turned out that they didn't have to work another day in their lives after their characters hit it big. So it is quite amazing how these two franchises emerged from absolutely nothing, and I think probably at the right time. I think that's the most important thing to say about Batman and the Ninja Turtles. They just arrived on the scene when nobody expected, but when they each came onto the scene, it was an absolute phenomenon. So we're going to start off with Batman's solo film, which is the 1993 classic, and I will announce this to the world, what I think is the greatest Batman film of all time. Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Batman, before this, had been featured in film and television many times before. By the time this movie came out in 1993, we had seen Batman outside of the comic books on old radio shows and old film serials, to a successful yet crazy campy television show in 1966 with Adam West, which also became a feature film as well, another one of my favorite Batman movies, all the way to the Tim Burton phenomenon that was Batman 1989 with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. But then something amazing happened. A young man named Bruce Timm and his friends, including Alan Burnett, Paul Dini, and a great voice director in Andrea Romano, they decided that it was time to bring Batman back to television in a whole new way, and thus Batman the Animated Series was born. Batman the Animated Series, of course, gave us the late Kevin Conroy, who is to this day Batman too many, and probably the role that needed to happen in Mark Hamill's career so he wouldn't just be pigeonholed as Luke Skywalker. because now he's actually pigeonholed as the Joker and he kind of loves it. But that, of course, finally gave us, after a couple of seasons of Batman the Animated Series, the first full-length feature film, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. So it didn't do well in the box office. That's a darn shame. And that's just because of the fact that the marketing from Warner Brothers was absolutely horrendous. But when it finally came to home video, the sales of VHSs at the time went up, and it's still one of the most sought after Batman films. So, am I safe to assume that this was not the first time that either of us watched this movie?
No, I've seen it before, but that was just on my Batman quest journey. I don't think I paid attention to it to the great detail that I have this go around, because as we get deeper into the comic, lore and journey that we've been on for years now, I think I go into a film that I've seen previous with different eyes every time. So this time I felt a lot grittier watching it, because I really saw that introduction of Batman the Animated Series and how it made this movie possible.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay, how about you? This is not your first time watching this movie, am I correct?
It was actually my first time seeing it.
Really?
So yeah, I really enjoyed
Wow.
it. Yeah. Are we allowed to talk about spoilers in the
This movie's been out for over 30 years. Spoil
Oh,
away.
okay, sure. Well, like first of all, I didn't see the I guess I consider it a twist because I thought that the villain was going to be someone else, and so I was surprised. I think yeah, they did an excellent job kind of making you think it would be someone else, and um it was a really good story. I really enjoyed it. So
Yeah, I mean, I remember renting it when it first came out on VHS at the now legendary Blockbuster Video, and I remembered enjoying it, but maybe it's because of the fact that I wasn't really too deep into Batman the Animated Series at the time, because when that show came out and I did watch episodes, I think my cousin was more into it than I was. I was only like 11 years old, 12 years old, and I was actually a lot more into the 1992 X-Men animated series at the time as well. Not that there's anything wrong with that. They're both excellent shows in their own special ways. But I started watching Batman the Animated Series reruns on Cartoon Network when I got into my teen years, 13, 14, 15, 17. And then when the animated series started coming out by the season on DVD, I was picking them up and I was watching them. I had actually already owned a copy of Mask of the Phantasm before I started picking up the TV series on DVD. So I had watched the movie many, many times. And as I got older, it just spoke to me a lot more. And I think it's just because of the fact that it's a very rich, thought out story. It's got such an excellent plot. It's got incredible characters. The voice cast is absolutely beautiful. The scope and the atmosphere of the film is beautiful. The unbelievable Shirley Walker score is wonderful. And it's a movie that really does grip you. I mean, with all the other Batman movies that were out there, there wasn't one that really tugged at your heartstrings as much as Mask of the Phantasm, because when you're going to make a Batman film, there's so many different directions that you can go in. When you take a look at all the Batman films in the past, it was always your basic good versus evil battle. There's a hero and there's a villain. Batman, we all know, has to stop the villain. That's really what the Batman story has been about. But that's also really what comic book movies were at the time. And they still were very much like that at the time, pretty much until 2000 when X-Men officially started at the box office. But Batman Mask of the Phantasm took a much different route. And to take the route of a very interesting take on Batman's origin story, and not just that, throw in a love story that and how it impacts him as growing into Batman, is definitely a big risk to take, especially if it is in fact a movie that is rated for children, because this movie was rated PG, but it wasn't necessarily a film for kids.
That was a different time though, because I think, like for me, the Batman animated series was my gateway to Batman. Honestly, it really changed my whole world. I would run home off the bus just to watch this series. And I don't think parents cared as much as to what their kids were watching back then like they do now. It was just go turn on cartoons, dinner will be ready in an hour, whatever the case may be. Well, at least for me, because I mean, like I said, it was right after school, so it was like 3:30, 4 o'clock. I would watch this in the afternoon. So when the movie came out, I remember it being on the shelves at Blockbuster, and I remember, just being super excited to see animated film in a clamshell. And I think that, like you said, Steve, as you age, you have a different appreciation for it. Because I certainly didn't have an appreciation for this film when it first debuted that like I do now. But life will change you. You'll have experiences. You'll understand what pain and grief and love is, and all of these things that you can kind of tie into a movie like this. And then Batman becomes a different person for you. He carries a different meaning. He's not just a superhero in a cape. There's a lot more complex layers to Bruce Wayne, and you don't see that as a kid. So I think the PG-13 rating is fair, but I don't think we need to judge harshly because we were in a different world then.
But the reason why it was rated PG is very simple, because when you really take a look at that movie, yes, there is physical violence on the movie, but there was physical violence in other cartoons that kids were watching at the time. You have to remember, this was when people were watching Ninja Turtles. Power Rangers was about to hit the airwaves. So punches and kicks are something that not many people really cared about. There was no cursing. There was actually some blood in the movie, which I didn't even remember when I first saw it as a kid. But when I watched it as an adult, especially the scene when Batman knocks one of Joker's teeth out, I was like, I don't remember that happening. So it was definitely a refreshing thing when I got older when I watched it. But at the same time, Cammy, I'm not going to disagree with you. It was a different time. I mean, if Invader Zim came out at that period of time, I think it would have stayed on for maybe 10 seasons. But we were living in a different world when that one aired. But anyway, yeah, I will agree with you to a certain extent, Cammy. You're not wrong about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of thinking of all the shows too, I mean, when we were watching adult films that were probably way too intense for us, Die Hard and Axel Foley came into my life around that period. So yeah, I was probably watching a lot of inappropriate material for my 11 or 12-year-old brain.
I don't think Beverly Hills Cop was inappropriate. My dad actually had me watch that movie with him when I was 12. And I just saw the new one, by the way, and I had such a good
I
time
loved
watching
it
it. I
so much.
enjoyed it.
Oh my
But
God. The
anyway,
nostalgia was just brilliant in it. I loved it so much.
yeah. But anyway, the other thing that I will definitely say that is a little bit of a fun fact, Andrea Beaumont, who is the other major character in this movie alongside Bruce Wayne, she is voiced by Dana Delaney. I didn't even think about this when I was younger, but when I started watching more of Bruce Timm's animated universe, that's when everything started to click. This was Dana Delaney's first time ever working with Bruce Timm and the animated series of DC. She would later go on to voice Lois Lane in Superman the Animated Series, and voice Lois Lane a couple times after in Justice League. So the fact that this was the point where she was officially found, because I will say this till the day I die, not just Bruce Timm, Andrea Romano deserves so much credit because of the fact that she just knew how to cast the right people for these animated series and films, because her attitude was, I don't want voice actors for this show and this universe. I want actors to voice these characters. That's why when you take a look at Batman the Animated Series alongside the animated film, besides Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, you have famous faces like Ron Perlman, the late Roddy McDowall, you have John Glover, you have Richard Mall, so many amazing voices from actual actors that have lent their voices to these iconic characters. And even Ephraim Zimbalist, who plays Alfred, that's a name that I will never forget because I always loved his take on Alfred. And I just love the fact that these specific voices that were given to these characters, especially when we talk about another movie later on this evening, you're going to see how these actors inspired others who are eventually going to take these roles at some point in time in animation, and they're going to do everything they possibly can to sound like these iconic people because they want to make the fans happy. I think that's really what it's all about, because oh my goodness, all the people that try to sound like Mark Hamill when it comes to voicing the Joker is unbelievable, and it is crazy how accurate Troy Barker is. And it's Troy Barker or Baker, I can't remember, but his current he's one of the current voices of the Joker right now in many different ways, even in the video games, I believe. And he sounds just like Mark Hamill. So clearly he is inspired by Mark Hamill's Joker. But Andrea Romano, chef's kiss, she was one of the main reasons why Batman the Animated Series was so successful, alongside Bruce Timm and the rest of his creative staff. Also, I mean, I love the animation in the film because there's definitely a little bit of CGI in there, especially the opening of the movie. The opening of the movie is absolutely wonderful. That powerful chorus in Shirley Walker's score. I mean, she had been scoring the animated series for years already. So just getting that to be something to have been continued on in the film is such a treat.
So like I said, it was my first time watching this movie, but I could tell right away it was connected to Batman the Animated Series. So
Yeah,
that was a real treat.
absolutely. Well, yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, the credits were the same print, and the whole scenes in Gotham, the opening fight scene is also incredible. And the other thing is, there are characters in this film that will never be shown again, and it's just amazing how much we remember them. I mean, going back to Andrea Romano, Sal Valestra was voiced by Abe Vigoda. Do you think any young kid at that time knew who the heck Abe Vigoda was? That's insane that they got him, plain and simple.
It's a rarity when you get, those classic actors. And I think that, like, for a kid like me, my mom had me watch an array of old films. I mean, from the early silent days all the way, through the musical era and stuff. So I did know who he was. However, I was an oddball child. I would be the one to run off the bus and go watch the evening news also. So to me, it's a standout character because, me and my mafia love, I will always connect to that dark point in the film. So yeah, having him voice that character was super special.
Yeah, and then you've got the Phantasm, who is the main baddie of this movie, though not necessarily a villain, simply because of the fact that Batman is tracking this person down. But, that's the interesting thing. Is the Phantasm really a villain because of this character's intentions? Because all that this person in this crazy costume of Grim Reaper-esque, all that this person is trying to do is take out crooks. And that's why it's so interesting about how Batman gets roped into all of it, because that's also what Batman does. A mass vigilante running around Gotham City, and now the Grim Reaper creature is doing the exact same thing. So is the Phantasm really a villain?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think for me on this film, there was a different take because it always seems like whoever is writing wants to see Batman fall in love. They want him to have a happily ever after, but they also know that that is going to always end in tragedy. And so I think that having this take on this story, having her end up being the villain was like a double-edged sword. And I think that the beauty for me in that she wasn't a regular character on the animated series, but she will always hold a special place in our heart because I think she will always hold a place in Bruce Wayne's heart. There was just something special about her that really just it just settled with Bruce, you know, like he couldn't get rid of her, and you could see how much it pained him to not be able to see this through, and it, which is really ironic because we all know Bruce Wayne doesn't want attachment by any female. He is like the biggest player on planet Earth. So to see him actually want to be with someone was doubly heartbreaking, you know, because you do want to see him finally find peace and find happiness. And Alfred alludes to that, you know, where he said your parents would want you to be happy, but it's just not possible. And this is probably the closest he'll ever get.
Yeah, and I mean the origin story of Batman has been done so many different times to the point where it's just ad nauseum and nobody wants to see it anymore. But I absolutely love how the movie does it because I love how it starts with the fact that he had been home from school and he's at their grave, and that's when he meets Andrea. And I think that that's what's so great about this film. I find myself appreciating the fact that we see Batman as Bruce Wayne mostly in this film, not necessarily as Batman. And that's another bold thing to do, especially for people who go to see this specific film. And also the romance, I like that it's very real. It's not cringe, it's not cheesy. Even the parts of the romance that are supposed to be classified as the cheesy, like the scene where Andrea and Bruce are kissing and Alfred comes in with beverages and he immediately goes away. And I love the fact that it happened 2 times in the movie. But but I absolutely love that it's done, the whole romance is done with such grace, and it's such a great driver of the story.
And I think
Yeah,
that too is what makes it so iconic and why people love it so much, because it's believable and it's relatable, especially when it comes to that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like right from the start, I could tell that they painted it in a way that wasn't like so cliche, like you were saying. They were very similar in a lot of ways that were very important, and then also very different. Like from the very beginning, she kind of brought like kind of a lighthearted kind of sense of humor that Bruce Wayne really needed at the time. And so they were different in those ways, similar in very important ways. And so I was always wondering, like, okay, what's going to happen? Because something's going to happen. Um, and then I just want to kind of rewind back to that scene where Alfred's coming in with the beverages because so I was watching this with my husband and he likes to kind of predict what happens. And when Alfred came in, he's like, "Oh no, he's gonna spill the beverages." And I'm like, "No, he's not, it's Alfred." so,
It's
so that was
Alfred.
really
It's
funny.
Alfred.
Yeah.
And I also, and I think that because of how well the romance is written, that scene, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, is one of the most gut wrenching, and it's the scene when he is at the grave site and he's literally in tears and in the rain saying, "I didn't count on being happy. Please tell me that this is okay." And then Andrea shows up and says, "Maybe they sent me." Like, that's just a very powerful thing. But you want to know something? That's Bruce Timm. That's just how he does his thing. That's why Batman the Animated Series is a legacy. That's why when people talk about their favorite incarnation of Batman, this is usually, I would probably say, out of 10 people, I would say at least 8 people will call this their best version of Batman. I only gave it 8 and not 9, Cammy, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that will say Michael Keaton.
Yeah, I'm one
Oh,
of those people.
trust me. When the Flash movie came out, it was so awesome to see Michael Keaton put the suit back on. That
Yeah,
was wonderful.
he is definitely the epitomization of Batman. He wears Batman. He exudes him outward, and it's beautiful.
But I also appreciate the fact that it wasn't just the whole origin of Batman. It was also the steps that he took into becoming Batman. Like, you literally saw him become Batman in stages, from a very clumsy ski mask wearing vigilante to that scene, which is also, I think, my favorite scene in the entire movie, the scene where he officially puts the costume on for the first time, and it's all done in shadow. You don't see his face. And when he puts the cowl on and you hear that famous Shirley Walker theme song, it's just like, wow. And then Alfred looks at him and goes, my God. Like, that is like, that's, if I would have seen that in theaters, I probably would have leaped up and clapped, because that was such a powerful scene. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, especially since like before that scene, Bruce Wayne is telling Alfred like everything was almost right except they're not afraid of me and I need them to be afraid of me. And then the moment he turns around in the mask, Alfred gasps. So
Yeah.
really well done.
That's the thing. I mean, the thing that's great about Alfred in the animated series is that he is such a presence, even when he's not there. And when he's there, he basically captures every moment that he's in. Like, I love the scene at the very beginning of the movie where he says to Bruce, why, you are clearly the epitome of sanity. And by the way, I have ironed your cape and put away your exploding gas balls. Like, that's just a great line, because that's the thing I love about Alfred. He just says these laughable, quirky lines, but he says them with such elegance and like a straight face. It's beautiful. Like, also like that scene where he is in that little bit of a fight with Bruce, and he says, you don't know me, Alfred. He goes, I diapered your bottom, sir. I very well ought to. Like, that's just a great line that comes from Alfred. Bravo, you know?
I really
So,
enjoyed the
yeah.
Joker in this one, though.
Yes.
I don't know. I think there was just something different about him. I really enjoyed the. He wasn't overwhelming. Maybe that's why I enjoyed him so much. You know, it was just a splash of Joker, but he had all of the right ambiance when he was on screen, and I really enjoyed the setting that they gave him, because it made him seem kind of like a recluse, but he was in like this crazy joyland, and it was fun to enter his world, because anytime that we were exposed to him, one of our main characters was in his setting, and it always adds to his sinister behavior and his laugh, and it makes it a lot richer. So I really did enjoy the Joker in this
Well,
film.
I was literally about to get to him, so thank you for getting us started, Cammie. You find out the Joker is in this movie, and then there's the and that's what is just the icing on the cake. The way that he is put into this story is absolutely perfect. The fact that he happened to be, because when all the pieces are put together with what the Phantasm is doing, they looked at the three mob bosses, Chucky Saul, Buzz Bronski, and Salvatore Balestra, and all of a sudden, we find out that the Joker was actually one of their lackeys before he became the Joker. So the fact that Sal actually goes to him for help, and the fact that he is terrified to go and see him because he knows what he has become. So it's like there's a relationship here to a certain degree, and yet the Joker, even though we all know who he is and we all love him, and the fact that we even get his little theme when they're on the little roller coaster in the old World's Fair, the fact that he was hiding out in the old Gotham World's Fair was a stroke of genius because of what happened in Bruce's past. But I just love the fact that he goes into the old house of the future, he plays with the dog, he talks to the maid robot. Then he tells Sal about the fact that Batman is not the one that's beating the mob, that's killing the mob bosses. Like, I love that he says he looks like the ghost of Christmas future. Like, it's just some great line. You see that when Mark Hamill gets there, he just kicks everything up to 11. He delivers some amazing lines. Like, I love the scene, and the fact that Sal, even though he's terrified, he was still not afraid to talk to him in a very harsh way. Like he said, do you hear me, you fool? They're going to come after you next. And then when you think the Joker is about to shoot him in the face, because he has that very scary look, he goes, "Don't touch me. I don't know where you've been." Like, it's just, you get the old humor back. He was a perfect piece to add to it. And just the fact that he wasn't just thrown in, no pun intended, for the shits and giggles. Like, he really added that extra dimension that led to the climactic scene at the end, the battle of Andrea and the Joker and Batman involved as well. And it's a game-changing ending. It's a great way to end the film.
And I'm horrible at quotes, but my favorite, I think it goes something like, "What does an old timer want with a two timer?"
Yeah, what does an old
I
timer
laughed
like
out
you
loud.
want with a two timer like me? That's a great line.
I was like, "Yes, that is awesome." It really hit me. I laughed out loud. And so there was a lot of good moments in this film, where you're laughing, you're crying, that you go through a gambit of emotions. And I think that's honestly what makes a really good animated film, when it can touch you in all the right areas, and it can leave you, either remembering it for years to come, or wanting more, or falling in love with characters, and those characters stick with you. So this film does a lot of that for, I think, a lot of people, and I think that's why it has such a cult following.
You're absolutely right. I think it's simply because of the fact that outside of all the other comic book movies that were there at the time, this was a plot driven superhero story. And the superhero and supervillain theatrics were simply just the icing on the cake, a little something extra. Like, follow the story. This is the real piece of it. And you get guys like Paul Dini and Alan Burnett and Bruce Timm writing this stuff, especially if you were already a fan of the animated series. You knew it was going to be something special. Like I said at the beginning, I think the biggest shame is the fact that this movie made no money at the box office. It was a monster flop. It came out right before Christmas. And just like, I remembered, I actually found on YouTube some of the old trailers and commercials for this movie, and those commercials do not do this movie justice. This was one of those movies where the trailer needed to give you a little bit more. I know that we're in an age right now where the trailer basically gives the movie away, but this movie needed to be given a little bit more promotion. So, I mean, the good news is this movie was never forgotten. The fact that this movie now has a major following, it's right up there with the rest of the animated series, absolutely. But I'm really hoping that the people who were in charge of that movie's marketing campaign got fired.
It was definitely ahead of its time, and I think that given the time that it did come out, though, there wasn't a lot of money set aside from big studios for the superhero. We've kind of iconicized these superheroes and made them into these two massive playing fields that you see today in terms of DC and Marvel, and the animated and both live action movies that we get. And I think it's the fan base, and it's because of movies like this that kind of paved the way for the things that we see today, is why I think we really support and get behind these movies and, share them. And we are fortunate that we have a social base where we can kind of get the word out there on our own, and we don't necessarily need to rely heavily on the marketing of these companies. And we see in a lot of areas, Justice League is one of those, with Snyder's film, just the power that went behind that film from the fan base of, we want this, make it happen. We don't care if you like it. That's what we want to see. And so I think that as we continue to share these films with generations, I still think that there's always going to be a place for this film.
What you just said made me remind myself of a very important thought. And I think one of the reasons why movies like Zack Snyder's Justice League has that big following, and why Batman Mask of the Phantasm has that big following, I think it's also because of the fact that the people that were behind these movies were fans. These were people that read the comics, watched the old shows, listened to the old shows on the radio. Because look, I don't know this personally. I don't personally know how big of a Batman fan Tim Burton is. I don't know how big of a fan Richard Donner was for Superman. So I just feel that when a person who has been given a project in the area of things like comic books or video games or things that really have that very niche fan base, if you are part of that fan base, you're going to bring something special. I mean, I don't know if either of you have ever seen the Warcraft film that was directed by Duncan Jones. So I played the game, I knew the lore, and I thought it was a beautiful adaptation. But people who had never played the game and don't know anything when they went into that movie, I loved, especially in the YouTube community, people who didn't like it all said the same thing. I didn't like it because I didn't understand it, but I can guarantee you that any person who knows this world and plays this game is going to love it. And they were absolutely right. And Duncan Jones, who crazily enough is also the son of the late David Bowie, played the game. So he wanted to bring the real deal to this Warcraft movie, and he did a perfectly great job, I think. I think the movie should have been 20 minutes longer because I think we could have added more to it, but that's just beside the point. The point that I'm getting at is people who truly love these franchises and love these characters are going to give you something truly special. And we all know that Bruce Timm, Alan Burnett, Paul Dini, and Dwayne McDuffie, and Butch Luchik, all these people, we all know that these guys blatantly announce in every interview, I read these comics, I watched these old shows, I love these characters. That's why Mask of the Phantasm is what it is, amongst many other films like that.
I wish book reviewers would have that same attitude. This book wasn't for me, but that doesn't mean it's complete and utter crap and we should go on a burn it tirade, you know.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to go any further deep into that, but anyway.
It would be nice to have that same camaraderie for a book, you know, but it is nice when people don't necessarily understand something, they don't know where it comes from, and they realize it might not be for them, but that doesn't mean it's not special.
But yeah, I always say that this is my favorite Batman film, and I will say that to the day I die. I mean, I've seen so many Batman movies, and there are so many other great Batman animated films. I mean, Cammy and I have discussed this, and we'll definitely discuss about more of these. But we've discussed Gotham by Gaslight. We've discussed The Doom That Came to Gotham. We haven't really officially talked about it here on this channel as a duo or more, but Batman Under the Red Hood is another great film. There's so many great animated Batman films out there, but I just feel that Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, that's another great Batman movie. And the great thing about Batman Beyond was the fact that Bruce Timm, and I highly recommend it if you haven't seen this episode of Justice League Unlimited, which is called Epilogue, it was a great love letter to all of Bruce Timm's Batman work, and the Phantasm actually showed up in that one episode, not saying anything, but was actually there in regards to the role that this character was supposed to play. So the fact that they called back to important pieces of Batman animated series lore for this one episode was wonderful. And the Phantasm itself is still a very iconic and memorable character. I mean, for crying out loud, the Phantasm has a Funko Pop, and I own that Funko Pop. So that's how you know Mask of the Phantasm. It's a 4 out of 4 stars for me. This is a beautiful, near perfect, if not perfect, Batman film. So let's get into a little bit more of a lighthearted subject. Let's talk about Turtles Forever. Now, a little bit of a fun backstory here. I found out about this film completely by accident. I was actually living in an apartment with a good friend of mine at that time, and I was just flipping through a couple of things on the internet and reading a couple of things in the TV Guide, because yes, this TV Guide was still coming with the New York Times. And all of a sudden I knew it was the 25th anniversary of the Ninja Turtle franchise, but they said this Saturday morning there is going to be a made-for-television special celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Ninja Turtles called Turtles Forever. So thank goodness the DVRs were there. I DVR'd it, and I can't even tell you how many times I watched that DVR by myself with friends. This movie is everything a Ninja Turtles fan could ever, ever want. But it also happens to be a movie that reminds me of one of my fondest memories with an old friend of mine who unfortunately doesn't live in New York anymore. But I'll get into that little moment a little bit later. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was the first time that people in the room were watching this. I actually downloaded the film so I could actually continue to watch it. I know there's a physical copy of it out there, but I don't own it. But I am just dying to know your thoughts. Lindsay, Cami, if it's not too much, I'd like Lindsay to go first because I know that you're going to be talking about it for the next hour.
Yeah, so this was also this was the very first time that I watched Ninja Turtles ever.
Oh,
It was
wow.
yeah, I know. So it was yeah, growing up I was always like I was always interested in it, but I think I was like so invested in Teen Titans at the time. I was like, you know, it was like the only cartoon I was watching. But this was such a treat. And speaking of Teen Titans, I think personally this movie was very ahead of its time because now you're seeing things like what was it? I think it was called Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans, where it's like Teen Titans from different universes meet and like they fight each other and then they fight someone else, and then you're seeing the same thing happen with the Spider Verse nowadays. And so
Yeah.
I didn't
Yep.
yeah.
Yep, you're absolutely right. The concept of the multiverse is now in the middle of getting milked for everything that it's worth. I mean, the multiverse is actually a DC Comics creation in the world of entertainment. They did that back in 1985 with Crisis on Infinite Earths. And eventually the same thing would happen. Actually, this movie was actually done before Marvel did their Secret Wars epic story. But before that, they already had a universe called the Ultimate Universe, which was a different Marvel universe with the same characters but doing different things, living different lives, and going in different directions that we didn't see in the original source material. But yeah, the concept of the multiverse was definitely something that was starting to spill out into a lot of areas of entertainment, mostly ironically in comic book form. But yeah, it's definitely something that right now a great many people are sick of. I personally will say that when it comes to crazy ideas like time travel and paranormal activity, I actually am a firm believer in the fact that the multiverse exists because we're always hitting different crossroads, and we always have that thought in the back of our heads after we go in that one direction. Well, what actually happens if we went in the other direction? And the fact that the idea about it possibly creating a brand new reality right there on the spot is a crazy idea, but it makes so much sense. I didn't anticipate talking about this, but I did this about 2 weeks ago when we discussed Crisis on Infinite Earths over here on this channel. My friend Gary, who is also a very important reason why I love Turtles Forever so much, said this idea about the multiverse. He said, if the multiverse exists in a world of infinite ideas and infinite possibilities in the multiverse, there is no doubt in my mind that in some alternate Earth, I am in fact a rodeo clown. So it's a real thing, I think. And the fact that we get to see in this film the main story, which is the 2003 version of the Ninja Turtles. And the most important thing about that was 2003 is also the year Teen Titans came out. And that was also the time when the Ninja Turtles finally started to become relevant again, because after the original animated series from 1988 finished, there was a lull in the world of Turtles, also unfortunately because of the fact that the Power Rangers had just gotten so huge. But there was a point from like 1996 to 2003 where people didn't even want to touch the Turtles because they felt that the franchise was dead. But the 2003 show came out, and all of a sudden there was new life, and now the Turtles are stronger than ever before. I mean, look at where they are right now. But the fact that we see this is like it starts off like a Jetsons meet the Flintstones kind of idea. The 2003 Ninja Turtles out of nowhere meet the 1988 Ninja Turtles. And that is, of course, always fun. I also just want to get this right out in the open. The one thing that I don't like about this movie, and it's a shame because I wish that if they would have done a little bit more in regards to effort, it could have happened. I'm very upset that they did not get the original voice cast from the 80s cartoon.
I'm sure they tried. I mean, that's not the first time I've heard that cast is really difficult to put together. But there was a couple, if I'm not mistaken, that were original from the 80s television series.
Well, I'm definitely certain that Rob Paulsen, Cam Clark, they are definitely not there voicing Leo and Raph. I will say the person who voiced Raph was very much accurate to sounding like Rob Paulsen. But also, unfortunately, the other issue was the fact that James Avery, who voiced the Shredder, had also passed away at the time. So that's one thing we couldn't really avoid.
I don't know. I still thought it was solid cast.
Oh,
I didn't really get caught up in the voices of the 87 cast because I was really here for the new party. I do own the movie, but I own the movie because I purchased the 2003 series, which I was completely adamant that I was never going to watch it because I'm true blue to my 80s series. However, I'm kind of glad I did add it to my collection. My nephew and I watched it a couple weeks ago together, and he had a really fun time with it. And he's a huge Turtle fan because of me. However, they are very different turtles. They are not my turtles. I really think Rafe has a bad attitude. I really can't stand his attitude in this series.
Raph attitude is
he's just angry. It's like, dude, why are you so angry? Like, calm down. The world isn't that serious.
Much like the one from the live action films. You've got to admit that.
Well,
he's very much like him.
I will give the 2003 series credit for a lot of things, and one is that they have a really unique twist on bringing a lot of 80s Easter eggs in. They tie in the movies very well. There are a lot of character traits that you can kind of play off both. So there's a lot of really unique attributes that this series brings. However, I think that once you are accustomed to growing up in a certain generation, you will always be partial to that. So no matter what you present to me, I've seen many turtle variations over the years, to include all the way up to the recent release of Mutant Mayhem. I've supported it all. I have watched it all, but I will always be partial to the 80s, and it will forever have my heart.
I will not blame you. I will not blame you for that.
This combination, though, is effing brilliant. I had so much fun with this film. I thought it was the coolest concept. I absolutely love the fact that they brought in the multiverse, and a comic book reader, lover will love this film because you really get a comic sense from this when they go into the multiverses and they bring out these characters, especially the black and white scenes.
Yeah, I want to talk about them later.
It's a really cool concept. I will say, for me though, being a true blue 80s fan, the harder part, and it's crazy because it's a huge plot point to this film, was Shredder, but not the Shredder that we find in the multiverse. Our Shredder from the 80s, I think they made him very weak. I think that the jokes fell flat for me in a lot of areas. The weird relationship that they kind of had to create with Krang was really odd.
I didn't get that part. I thought it just reminded me of the relationship they had in the show.
But that's what I mean. I think they tried too hard, and maybe again my partiality to the 80s, but I just felt that it was a lot more natural then. I thought that the dialogue flowed a lot better. I just thought this was very choppy. I think Krang had a lot more hits as far as jabs at Shredder than Shredder did at him. Bebop and Rocksteady were pretty solid though, considering they had very little roles, but I don't know that 80s version of Shredder in this for me just was really weak sauce.
Well, I
But
think that was what they were trying. I personally think that that was something that they were trying to do. I think throughout the film, they were trying to say, isn't it weird that we loved this 80s cartoon so much, but can't we really realize just how over the top cheesy and campy it was, considering what the Turtles used to be? But there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's what just added to the fun, the fact that they were actually in the film making fun of itself. I mean, Cammy, I can see that where you wouldn't really enjoy that because I know you're a purist. I appreciate your fandom.
I mean, I did take that take on it also. Like maybe they're overdoing this, you know, they're trying to show us how cheeseball we really had it back then. But I don't know, when you have someone as iconic as James Avery and he's the voice and he forever lives in your heart, don't touch my Shredder. I will cut you.
It's Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince. You can't deny his wonderful genius.
You can, but he wasn't there. He wasn't a part of this film, and I do think they did have a unique take on Shredder. You know, making him like this huge, just larger than life villain was pretty fun. And just the different take on the idea and the concept that you have all these different versions of these characters out there was super cool. And as a comic book reader and a forever fan of the Turtle fan base, I thought this film was very well done.
Yeah, there's so many great moments. I think that the thing that's the difference between Mask of the Phantasm and Turtles Forever is Turtles Forever has a lot of great moments. Like the scene where the 2003 Turtles see the Technodrome and Raph goes, "A giant golf ball on wheels? This is the Shredder's ultimate weapon?" Like that's just hilarious because as someone who watched that cartoon as a kid, I'm like, it is a giant golf ball on wheels. How the heck did we find this thing threatening? And then, of course, this is my second moment that I have to share because it's just so funny with in regards to my friend Gary. We were watching this movie, and when Krang shows up for the first time in the movie, he screams out, "Holy crap, it's Truman Capote!" And we just laughed. It was just one of the funniest things that we ever said. But yeah, Bebop and Rocksteady, they didn't have much of a role, but they said, "With great pleasure, Master Shredder," or "Say your prayers, Toidles." Like those are what makes Bebop and Rocksteady. I love the scene when they actually go into the 80s world with Donnie's transporter stick, because that's the funniest thing. It's like the 2003 Turtles saying, "That's not gonna work," and it's like, you clearly don't know what Donnie can do.
Right. And the animation was on point. I mean, it really felt like you stepped back into our cartoon, you know? My favorite part of this whole film, though, was when my turtles talked to me just like they did in the 80s. That was
Breaking the fourth
superb.
wall.
Superb. I was like, oh my, I laughed every single time it happened. And then finally, one of the characters was like, "Who are you talking to?"
He was like, "Who are you talking to?" I'm like, finally, he did it. So I was like waiting for him to yell that out. No, but I like this. My favorite line is when they get into the 80s world and then they make the plan. And then Leo says, "But first, we have to save April." And then you see all those stupid creatures. And then Donnie goes, "We save April at least once a day. You can set your watch to it." I'm like, they never said that on the show, but that is exactly what they did in every episode.
Yeah,
It was
but
perfect.
that just goes to show you though that we literally sat there you know, and watched a variation of the same plot over and over, just a different storyline, you know. There wasn't a lot of ups and downs when you watch the 2003 version. Totally different storylines. You don't see all the same characters and, you know, episode after episode. There's a lot more storyline drive to that series versus ours. Ours was just very cookie cutter. But if you look at cartoons from that era,
Yes.
that's how it was. You know,
Yes.
we sat down, we saw the same characters, we saw it was just a different lesson. You know, it was like a some kind of after school special every time.
But that scene was not without a stroke of brilliance. The way that Mikey defeats the mutant banana, that was beautiful. It's like you had to pause, just like the mutant banana did, and think for a second. And you're like, wow, that actually works.
Yes. There was a lot of really great moments that you could appreciate even if you were a watcher of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle franchise from 2003, you know, because it did give a lot of plot points for those fans as well. You know, some of the things that maybe I didn't quite resonate with or get right away, but I have started to watch the series and I've been consuming it pretty rapidly. And again, I don't love it as much as I love the 80s series, but there is a lot to be appreciated in that more
Yeah.
modern series.
I'm also going to be agreeing with you in regards to the Utrom Shredder. I was not a big fan of the character. I also wasn't really the biggest fan of Karai either. I mean, I know that Karai is a big character in turtle lore, but I just didn't really care for how I preferred, as far as any of the characters from the 2003 world, I really did enjoy Hun. But I also loved how when they officially discovered the multiverse and we actually saw that scene with all the different screens and you saw all those different renditions of all the trolls. Like you saw a scene from the Archie comic strip, you saw the 1990 movie. I personally clapped when they did acknowledge the 2007 animated Image Eye film, because that is also a very underrated Ninja Turtles movie. I love the 2007 TMNT. It is a wonderful film.
Oh, there's so much to be loved by that scene. I mean, I've honestly, like, I know this is gonna sound old, but I rewound it so
I
I
think we
could watch
did.
it
We all did, especially us
just so
turtle fans.
I could pause it and look at that. I mean, as a fan, whether it is just from a cartoon base or from a comic base, there's so much to appreciate in that setting. You know, there's just the turtles for every generation, for every fan, in every moment, and there's just so much to be seen there. And I don't know, for me it's like I could even look to the future of now what is Ronin, you know? I mean, I
And
got that deep into it. I thought it was really cool. But Karai though, I liked her character and I liked what she did in that
yes,
moment, because
I like that.
she set aside her villainous and she did it for the greater good of, hey, the destruction is to be had by all, not just the turtles in this. You are destroying all of us, so step back, you know. And I thought that was super cool because that really just goes to show you what kind of ninja training she has, you know. I mean, that really at the core, it's not about you, it's about the greater good of the cause.
Right. So now I'm going to dive a little bit deeper. And Lindsay, if you don't get this, by all means, it's fine. We know you probably won't. Did you, Cammy, notice Toka and Razar?
I did. I did. And again, that's why I give this movie so much props. It's like, you know, they touched it all, they did. And it doesn't have to be a big time, you know, like you don't have to get a lot of screen time, but they did just enough to give us a little bit of everything. And it was like, you know what? Chef's kiss. This was good. I am so glad you put this movie on my radar, not just for this discussion, because you actually had me watch this a while back. And I've really fallen in love with this movie. It's become one of my top 3 turtle favorite films.
Wasn't. I mean, knowing you and knowing how much you love the turtles, I am shocked that
I
you weren't screaming from the rooftops by
You
now.
know, I honestly thought, because maybe it just so happened to be synonymous with the other series that I was adamant I just didn't have time for, or didn't have a need for. That's probably why I overlooked it. It was just like one of those things. And then when you told me about it, I was like, there's something turtle I don't know about. Oh, we've got to rectify this. Excuse me, I'll be back. And
And
it
so
was like I
then
cleared my calendar for it.
And so then, of course, we discover Turtle Prime, which clearly is not a plot that is unbeknownst to anyone who understands stories about the multiverse. This was the very first time that we ever saw the 1984 Mirage Ninja Turtles in animated form. And I absolutely love how they did it. I love how they made Leo narrate like a thought bubble in the comic book. Like, I love, and then of course one of them goes, "Who is he talking to? Why is he talking to himself?" Like that was beautiful, and I love how they looked like they came right out of the Eastman and Laird comic. And the fact that it was black and white made it wonderful too. And I
Oh, and
also, yeah,
I don't know if you've watched the 2003 series at all, but there's actually a point where Casey Jones is walking downtown and he comes to the corner of Eastman and Laird Street. I was like, "Oh my
oh,
god, that
that's
is
fantastic.
beautiful." I
That's
mean, just
fantastic.
I'm telling you, just the little nuggets that this series does, not only in this film that we're discussing, but the series as a whole, it really does pay a homage to yesteryear. It shows us how far we've come in the Turtleverse, and it's a lot of fun, you know. I will say Raphael still gets on my ever loving last nerve, but you know, you can't win them all.
Really love how they even tried to make a world as dark as, because that's the thing, Lindsay. If you don't know this, the Ninja Turtles comic was not lighthearted when it first came out. It was a very dark, gritty comic, and the history about how we got from 1984 Mirage to 1987-88 animated show is absolutely an incredible story, because it was based on making an action figure line. And in order for that to be successful, we have to make the cartoon, we have to make it more child friendly, we got to give them different color bandanas, names on the belt buckles. That's an amazing story. But I love, even in a world as dark as Mirage, that they could still do a couple of lighthearted moments, like the scene where the 1984 Shredder comes in and the Turtles just hit him with trash and knock him off the roof, which is actually kind of, I think, remnants of the 1990 film when he falls off the roof, which I thought was pretty clever. But I love that. I love that that even the 1984 Shredder shows up and he's like all serious, just like the Turtles, and then bam, let's just throw a can at him. It's funny. It's funny.
That's actually my favorite turtles in my collection. The Mirage actually has a space on the wall over here.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. And I just loved how they all how the movie ends. I love that all the characters say different lines. Like I love
Yeah.
that the 88 turtles say it's ninja time, and the 2003 turtles say go green machine or cowabunga. Like I just wonderful. It was, and then you get Eastman and Laird, even though it's really not Eastman and Laird, wondering if the comic book is going to be successful. And if you actually take a look at the final scene, right above the big spread of Ninja Turtles, right above it is the original, very first sketch of Michelangelo that was made by Kevin Eastman. So that was a very nice nod at the very, very end.
Yeah, I'm telling you that there's just so many beautiful Easter eggs in this film. It really is, I think, one that excuse me, I think it's gonna be one that's timeless. I think it's one that you can share with multi-generations of turtle fans, and it's gonna resonate with all of us.
Well, that's really, I mean, look, it was for the 25th anniversary. You have to do something special. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy to believe how much time has passed since this movie came out, because we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of this franchise this year. I cannot believe how old this movie is. It's so funny because when I take a look at a lot of things from my youth, whether it's a band's CD that I listened to or a movie that came out, it's like, oh my God, I remember when this first came out. It is crazy to believe that movies that I remember when they first came out are now hitting their 30th, 35th anniversaries. It is crazy. Last year, it is hard to believe that that we celebrated the 30th anniversary of The Sandlot. That is crazy to me. I cannot believe that this year we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of Pulp Fiction and Forrest Gump and The Shawshank Redemption. It is unbelievable to think about things like that.
Hey Steve, how about we don't and say we did, because you're just
Yeah,
making me feel really old.
yeah, but Lindsay, since this was one of your first exposures to a little bit of our stuff, how do you feel about it, and do you want to venture into more turtle stuff in other shapes and forms?
Yeah, one second. This is Bruce, by the way, my
We
cat.
know
Um,
Bruce.
oh yes. Just in case any new viewers don't know.
We love
But
Bruce.
yeah, so I had so much fun. Like I said, I've always been interested in watching TMNT, and so and it's like even though I know a little bit about it, I knew exactly when they shone the light on the 80s turtles for the first time. They're like, "Look who we found." I knew exactly who they were because I've seen them around so much, and I'm like, "Oh,
Oh
oh,
my
it's this
God.
kind of movie. This is going to be so fun." And it was. And one of my favorite parts, since we were talking about favorite scenes, was So it's established in this movie that the 2000s turtles can't be seen, and they won't go out in broad daylight. And then we're seeing the 80s turtles just kind of passing by everyone on the street looking for pizza. Hey, how's it going? And that was funny. Yeah, so I'd love to see more turtles, of course.
Crazy pizza toppings. Oh God, because that's what they did. That's I still remember in the very first episode. I still remember the very first episode of the original show, and that it was called Turtle Tracks. Give me the slice with anchovies and peanut butter. I remember that.
Mhm.
I love peanut butter,
Yeah.
but I'll never put it on pizza. But
I always remember the anchovies, peanut butter, and I think at one time he put M&Ms on it too.
yeah, I think so. Maybe they're out of jelly beans. I don't know. But I would definitely say, Lindsay, if you want to get into more, if you really don't have the ability to check out the cartoon, there's an excellent comic book out there. I'm not reading it, but I know that Cammy is. You should definitely check out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures. It is
Will
still
do.
going strong. It is still an extremely popular comic book amongst many people. And I am hoping that when Cammy and I are finally able to do our creators notes recording this year of Eastman and Laird, we're going to talk about all of these different incarnations of the Turtles, including Saturday Morning Adventures. But we're going to conclude with one more film, and it is the crossover we never knew that we wanted, but now we just know that we can't have a world without it. And that, of course, is Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, loosely based on the James Tynion comic book that I actually have read all 3 miniseries of, and they are definitely a lot of fun. But I remember when this movie was coming out, and I didn't even know there was a comic book coming straight to DVD and Blu-ray. All I knew it was Batman, Ninja Turtles. I need to be a part of this. And this is one of the most fun times that I have ever had watching any kind of movie. It starts out like a typical Batman animated movie, but you know the turtles are going to be in it. And the minute when you see the turtles in the shadows for the first time, the minute Mikey puts a slice of pizza in his nunchuck holster, you know what kind of movie you are in for. Guys, I have been waiting, and I wish Andy could have been here tonight to chat with us, but I have been waiting to talk about this movie with you both because this movie is an absolute joy. And I love how I can watch this movie over and over again and still find a crazy Easter egg in there that just tugs at my heartstrings and my nostalgia strings in so many different ways. Guys, I love this movie so much. It is wonderful.
I was like I already knew I was going to have a fun time with this, but it really blew me away in every aspect. The animation was just a treat to see. The script was great. I laughed out loud so much. And the voice cast was so strong there. I recognized a few voices right away that I'm a big fan of. But I guess like to start off so the script, I was really impressed by the
This was
script and
wonderful.
how funny it was and so yeah, it was great. And then my favorite line was when Alfred is introduced to no, it's not Alfred, sorry, it's Gordon, um, is introduced to all of the turtles, and he's like, just think about your retirement when one day when turtles don't talk and clowns are funny. It was so good.
There are so many great lines in this movie. I mean, and also some great callbacks to so many things. I mean, the one that just popped into my head was when they were having pizza in the Batcave for the first time, and Alfred says, "Can I offer any of you gentlemen some napkins?" And they all go, "What for?" I'm like, "Oh, that's from Ninja Turtles too." That's a great line. No, my favorite scene is the scene when they find the Batcave and they encounter Robin for the first time, which is Damien, by the way, just in case we all don't know which Robin it is. But I just love the fact that Mikey just freaks the heck out and he goes, "I'm Batman and I'm T-Rex. This is the greatest day of my life." And they're like, "Mikey, get down." He goes, "No way, dude. I live up here now." Like, Mikey is an absolute joy in this movie. I love every minute that he is on screen.
He is my
Mikey might
absolute
oh
favorite Ninja Turtle.
I was a Leo guy when I was growing up, but I love all the turtles in
Mikey.
their own special ways. Mikey was great in this movie. And I just love how they found all of these little cliques and camaraderie throughout the movie. I mean, first of all, I knew from a mile away that Donnie and Batgirl were going to be a team. I knew it right off the bat, and I love how they played off of each other. They were one of my other favorite parts of the film.
I think Mikey might be the first fictional character that I know of that actually really loved Gotham and genuinely. So that was
And there's so many other great callbacks. Like I love that the version of the Penguin in this movie, it's Burgess Meredith from the 66 show. You totally recognize the way that he speaks. Also, everything that happens in this movie, it's like you're watching it and you're just saying, yes, that absolutely works. I mean, if you were going to team the Shredder up with any member of Batman's Rogues Gallery, Raj Al Ghul, perfect, absolutely perfect. But also, I didn't expect to see as many villains as I did. I mean, Tara Strong, she's in this movie voicing Harley Quinn. And oh my goodness, you gotta like that's a great scene. She just wanted to see if her makeup wasn't smudging, and then she just does her flips, and Shredder goes, "I hate Gotham." Like that's beautiful. Also, they didn't make Shredder a wimp in this movie. The first battle that Batman has with Shredder is incredibly good.
That was, I think, probably the strongest point in the whole film for me is how they kept the integrity of the true foundation of the ninja mindset and the training and how important it was to legacy and these characters. And then to see him face Batman, you're like, can Batman handle this? For the first time, I'm kind of rooting for the villain. Well, never mind. I root for the villain all the time. Who the hell am I kidding? But nonetheless, I thought maybe Batman might not stand a chance against him. So it was an interesting dynamic to kind of see how Batman adapted to the ninja mindset, because it's not really a villain he's accustomed to fighting. He's got very predictable characters for the most part that all stream from Arkham Asylum. And so to have these very random mutated characters, that are coming at him, he's just like, oh shit, how do I handle these guys?
And I also love how each and every turtle is like, well, actually, that was a question that I wanted to ask you guys, because this is something that we have been seeing a lot more recently. Because my wife was looking at a scene from the movie, and she's like, I don't like the fact that they all have different body types. Like, this is something that they seem to be doing a lot now. What is your overall attitude about that? I mean, Cammy, I never actually asked you this question. What do you think of it?
What do you mean different body types?
Like Donnie was a little bit taller and a little bit thinner. Raph was definitely more on the bulky side. Like they're different. They're not all one mold with different bandanas and belt buckles. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, on that, I think it's an evolution of society. I think that they have molded and adapted into their mindset, and they've played into their strengths. We would expect to see that Raphael is a little bit more defined, and his training is different. Leonardo is very intuitive, and he's very introverted, but he has to be kind of like the leader, the elder brother in a sense. Michelangelo is Michelangelo. He's a goofball. I don't care what you do with them. He's always going to be goofy, and he's always going to have goofy attributes. And then Donatello, you have these very unique things about them that I think it's about time they came to the forefront. Although yes, they are brothers, they are turtles, they all derive from the same vial of ooze, but they have very distinct characteristics that set them apart from each other. And I think that defining those is just a stroke of genius, because it's allotting for the characters to evolve.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I noticed that right away too. That they all looked even more different from each other, and I like that they really like brought out their personalities in that way. It was also like not just their body types, but also their faces. I think they like animated their eyes and mouths differently too, so that was really well done.
Yeah, and I also really like that each turtle in this movie definitely was from a different era of turtles. I think clearly Mikey is from the 1980s, but Raph definitely was either from the 1990 film or the 2003 show. Leo definitely comes straight out of the movies for me. I'm reminded of Ninja Turtles from 1990 in that version of him. And Donnie, I can't really pinpoint, but I don't care. I just thought that Donnie was great all around. Like, I also love the fact that he wasn't afraid to stand up to Batman when he asked him, "How did you get into the Batcave?" And he's like, "Well, it wasn't difficult, judging by the characteristics of where you actually did this, and then all going where your crime was. I don't think you want to take any constructive criticism right now." And he goes into his show like that. That was beautiful. The delivery was perfect. It's also really great because it was such a great balance. Like, it wasn't always funny. It had some serious moments, but I loved how they just managed to know when to get serious, when to get funny, when to get sympathetic. It was a perfect package. So we talked about how Batman, if he could handle the Shredder, how about Robin taking on the Turtles?
Yeah, I know. I mean, because I know a little bit about Damian Wayne, and he's probably, well, one of the more, I guess, like one of the Robins I would not want to cross, if I met him in real life. And then I just love that like Mikey didn't really take him seriously at first. He's like, "Aw," like, and then it's like, "Oh shoot," like, ugh. So
Still can't get over all the other treats that we got in this movie. Like, okay. Did they really have to make Baxter Stockman sound like Jeff Goldblum? No, but I'm so glad that they did, because it just adds so much more to the comedy of the movie. I thought that was a stroke of genius. Just in case, if you don't get the reference, everybody out there, it's because Jeff Goldblum starred in the 1987 film The Fly. So they thought it would be really funny to do that. But I kind of love that version of Baxter Stockman, because I was used to the one from the old cartoon. And yes, I even remembered him being played by Tyler Perry in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, which I will say is such a fun movie, because that one, unlike the first one, really harps on the nostalgia of the original television series. I love the second movie, especially because you get the theme song from the show, the original cartoon at the end credits. That was wonderful. But also all the great rogues galleries, like, and what they actually did with them. Like, again, all the elements that they took from both franchises was absolutely perfect. The scene where Mikey goes, "How could you not love a city with blimps all over the place?" Like, what? Like, that's the question that every Batman fan asked about the animated series, you know?
and then
Also,
at the end, the fact that one of the blimps actually saves them, and then he's like,
yeah.
"Oh, that's the purpose of them."
Yeah. Also, there was the scene where they actually gave Joker, meaning Ra's al Ghul and Shredder, gave Joker the mutagen. That was another great idea. Creating a concoction with the TCRI ooze and the Joker's laughing gas. Wow. Even I wouldn't have thought of that. And what they did to all the Rogues Gallery villains that were in that movie, and yet, even though they made them really menacing looking, oh God, the scene with the Scarecrow. Batman says to Leo, he calls himself the Scarecrow. He's like, really? The scare? And oh God, the scene with Poison Ivy after her mutation. So she just sits there. Let's walk around her like.
That was really
And
funny.
please tell me you sat through the credits to see the Joker mutation in its full force.
Oh, can we talk? Can we please wait? Because I got
Okay.
something to say about that.
Okay.
But also also the other little Easter eggs, I didn't actually realize when they were in Ace Chemicals. Did everybody notice the scene where Mikey threw a foot soldier at the TV screen? Gotta rewatch that. That's actually from an old Ninja Turtles video game.
There is a great nod to video games in this. And
Yeah.
I think that that needs to be like in the I mean, even from the opening credits, I mean, the music, it just gives me video game vibes 100%.
How about the scene at the very beginning when you see all the turtles in shadow? It's right out of the opening credits from the original cartoon.
Yes,
So
yeah.
many great nods. And also Alfred is
Honestly, yeah. I mean, just as genius as Turtles Forever, I do think that this is a true testament. And whether you're a Batman fan at heart or a TMNT fan at heart, you can get just as many Easter eggs from both franchises in this film and walk away totally satisfied. And yeah, does it kind of make Batman and Alfred a little goofy? Yeah, sure it does. But and that's what bothered me the first time around, because I went in like as a Batman fan more than a Turtle fan, and I was like, hold on, pop your own balloon there, Missy. It's supposed to be fun for both franchises, and to kind of see Batman let loose a little bit, it became, a little bit more
yeah,
palatable for me a second, third time around. But yeah, there's just so many great things, and this has such a huge nod to the video game players
yeah.
out there. It
Yeah,
really
I
does.
mean, you're absolutely right. Even the scene at the very end, even though it does sound a little cringy when Batman goes, "You can't go yet. It's pizza time." Like, you know what? Absolutely wonderful. That's such a great way to end it. Also, I also have to say, because I actually did do a little bit of rewinding myself just because I laughed so hard and I forgot how funny that scene was. When Mikey runs into the room in Arkham where Harley and Joker have mutated, and they're kissing with their tongues, and then all of a sudden he goes, "Ugh." Like, I just thought that was really funny.
But it just plays into how innocent they really are. You do see a couple of instances here where they really play into the teenage side of them.
Yeah.
When I think it was Leonardo fighting Raja Ghul, and
Yeah.
he's like, "Well, I'm 16 and I learned that from a rat," and it's like, boom,
Yeah, that was a
one
great
of the
line.
most villainous, and then he's telling him straight to his face. And I absolutely adored when Mikey found the Batcave for the first time, and just his excitement was just pure joy, just
Yeah.
absolute pure
Well,
joy.
also when they see the Batmobile for the first time, they go,
Oh,
"How
classic.
much? How much do you think that costs? My soul? Could I buy that?"
Because that's what
That
I
was such a
pay.
good
Or
line.
the scene when they're in the Batcave and Raph says, "Yeah, typical. Looks like just a lonely old guy with too much money on his hands and doesn't have a clue what to do with it." Like that's again, it's making fun of Batman. It is. I know, Bruce. We don't mean to offend you, but it's just it's all the little plays on it, and the fact that Batman brings out the darker side of the Ninja Turtles, and the Turtles bring out the lighter side of Batman, because we have to remember both of these franchises have gone from dark to light, light to dark. I mean, heck, if you want to see another really great animated Batman movie, you got to watch The Return of the Caped Crusaders, which is based on the 1966 movie. And the fact that Adam West and Burt Ward actually voiced Batman and Robin in that movie is pure genius. It's so over the top fringe, but it's exactly what the 1966 Batman show was. And that's again why DC animated films are such great packages most of the time. I think they've been missing the mark a little bit, but now in recent years, but movies like this, it's just like, now I got to get into the one thing that I don't like about this movie. We needed more
Yeah, I can see
because of
that.
that because it's that post credit scene. Why
Oh,
haven't we
there
why
you go.
haven't we received a sequel yet? If there,
Yeah, I agree.
we're in a world that we're living in with prequels and sequels, there are certain films where we don't need one. But then there
Mhm.
are some where we absolutely demand a sequel. Like, look, the highest grossing animated film of all time now is Disney Pixar's Inside Out 2. First of all, I have said to people that was a movie that deserved a sequel because of what they left open at the end of the first movie. And number two, I think it's better than the first movie. But this movie, Batman versus Ninja Turtles, it needs a sequel. And what needs to happen in that sequel is we need to get all the characters we didn't get in the first movie. We need Casey. We need April. We need Splinter. And I think we also need Nightwing.
I think it would just
Yeah, I
be
agree.
cool to get a take on the mutated versions of everybody, because I mean, Batman mutated was super rad. We just alluded to the Joker mutated. I think giving that a little bit more airtime would be cool, because they had this unique, like, extra superpower, when they were mutated. And, obviously we know our Turtles is mutated, but they're very kind and innocent and, fun, lighthearted, very intelligent beings. versus these mutated versions of these villains, that could get sinister quick, and I'd love to see that.
Oh yeah. Also, another great line from the movie: "Mikey, push some buttons."
And then Damien is like, I wanted to push all the buttons, and
Yeah,
oh, that was so funny.
it was great. This is one of those movies. It's like I cannot believe I haven't watched it as many times as I should have. But no, I think that we need another chapter in this story. I mean, for crying out loud, the comic book has 3 chapters already. And I just think that we still need to explore. We need these worlds to collide a little bit more because that's the other thing. When we first saw Barbara unmasked in the beginning of this movie, I actually thought it was April.
I did too.
Me too.
I did
Yeah.
too. I was like, wait, that's Gordon? What? That's freaking awesome.
But no, that's what I'm saying. It just shows you as fans, we need April in this world. We need Splinter. We need Casey. We need other characters on the evil side. Like if they wanted to bring Bebop and Rocksteady, or heck, if they wanted to bring other characters like maybe Slash or anything like that that we could enjoy, that would be awesome. Like I would love to see Batman and the Bat family go to New York and solve a crime on the Turtles' turf, just like the Turtles did for Batman. But I still think we need to have Nightwing come along. I think Nightwing needs to be in this world too because we didn't get Dick as Robin. I had no issue because you see the thing about this version of Damian, and I'm used to seeing the animated version of Damian in the previous animated films out there, like Son of Batman and Batman versus Robin and all that stuff. That's the Damian I'm used to. This version of Damian definitely had a little bit of the other Robins in him. You know, like would it be really cool to maybe, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's diving a little too deep, but maybe would it be fun if they ended up bringing Superman along with the Bat family into New York? Or would Damian maybe reach out to the Titans? Like there's so much left on this canvas for these people to play with. And I'm still absolutely shocked that they haven't done anything with this yet, especially with the end credits scene. It's like you don't make an end credit scene without any ideas of making another one. That's all I'm gonna say.
I think it's possible they could make another one, especially with the end credit scene. But I remember, wow, I think it was the Judas Contract Teen Titans movie. I remember
Yeah,
when they first announced it, and then it was on pause for the longest time, but they did
yeah,
eventually make it, and it was worth the wait. So I wouldn't be
yeah.
surprised if they were thinking of making a sequel.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the Judas Contract was originally supposed to be based on the 2003 show. It was supposed to have that version of the Teen Titans. But the fact that they actually did make the Judas Contract as part of that New 52 animated storyline, it definitely was an interesting take. And it was really great to see how um Robin's story was expanded a little bit in that entire timeline and how he developed that relationship with Raven. It's I don't think it's as good as the previous Teen Titans film, which is Justice League versus the Teen Titans. I think that one is a little bit better, but it's still, you're right. The Judas Contract, it was supposed to come out years ago before its actual release. I mean, I guess the Titans fans were okay that they got trouble in Tokyo just to keep them at bay. But I'm not gonna lie, when I did see that this movie was coming out, I was like, really? They're finally making it. I was shocked. So thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate that.
Well, I will definitely say this movie holds a special place, not in my heart, but in my life, because that's actually the inspiration for the wall behind me. It goes from TMNT through Batman, and it's all of the versions of TMNT and Batman that I like. The wall is not complete. There was actually some Funko Pops that I had just gotten in the mail. One of them is Batman the World, which does not get enough love in this world. That's a story for another day, but that's going to fill in some gaps over here. But I actually have some cells from this movie signed by Kevin Eastman, and they sit up
Awesome.
on the top, and then it just kind of runs into the Batman lore. I'm telling you, these two franchises are my world. I absolutely love them both. To have them fuse is just an amazing thing. And in the way that it did, it gave me dark, it gave me light. And that's exactly what you just said, Steve. You know, we've seen them in the best of both worlds. And I think this collaboration was genius because it allotted for us to, you know, see a fun side of Batman and just a quirky side of the Turtles, but they know when to be serious and they know when to fight crime. And seeing them in Gotham City, but enjoying it was really fun, you know, because Gotham isn't that bad. It gets a bad rap because we only see it at night. But I think that there's a lot to be appreciated about Gotham City, and the fact that Mikey kept pointing that out. This is a really cool place. You know, it was
It's
fun.
amazing. No, you're
This is a good
absolutely
film.
right. You're absolutely right. This is a wonderful movie. It's really funny about how so many people, I mean, first of all, when I knew this movie was coming out, I knew I was going to enjoy it. I didn't care. Even if it was going to be over the top horrible, I had a feeling I was still going to enjoy it. But I love going into some YouTube videos and even watching some of the bigger movie YouTube critics talking about this movie, and they all start out in the same way. I didn't even know what I was going to get when I saw this movie, and now I can't imagine a world without this movie existing. I love that this movie, when people actually see it, how much love it receives. I think it receives more love than some of the most well-known comic book animated films that we've even, maybe even more than some of the films that we talked about today. I mean, I don't think it's going to ever get as much love as Batman Mask of the Phantasm, but I think it would probably get more love in a different kind of way. But no, these two franchises are world changing, they're game changing, they have shaped generations of fans, and I just really feel that even though there are those that believe we're in a world of superhero fatigue, it's just great to know that when it comes to popular franchises, how popular these two are. And I will personally say, at this stage in my life, I don't think I ever would have imagined, knowing where the Turtles were at one time, how popular they are now. Knowing that we have gotten so many different, the fact that after the 2003 cartoon came out, how there would be two more cartoons after that. The fact that we would have two new live action movies and a computer animated movie that didn't get as much love as it should have. And the fact that even in the world of comics, the comics are now more popular than ever. Batman and Ninja Turtles. As a matter of fact, this week, there's a brand new Ninja Turtles #1 that just came out, written by a very well-known writer, Jason Aaron. I actually had to read that book twice just to make sure I knew exactly where I stood. And I will definitely say I'm excited for issue #2. It's a good jumping on point for me as someone who still has a lot of catching up to do as a Turtles fan with the comics. I'm excited for reading Turtles in the comics. And yes, we have The Last Ronin too. That's another beautiful, beautiful take on the Ninja Turtles, which apparently has been greenlit to be a rated R live action film. So I am super excited to see The Last Ronin, because clearly that's another cult favorite. There are people that love it. There are beautiful editions of that book. There's Funko Pops of The Last Ronin. I mean, the Turtles are alive and well at 40 years old. And I'm damn happy about that.
Yeah, and today, as a matter of fact, they released a beautiful hardcover of the history of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So if you haven't gotten it from your comic book store, definitely ask your comic book store owner to order it for you, because it's a beautiful hardcover book.
Right. So I think that's going to put a pin in this one, everybody. Once again, Cammie, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining me. I'm glad that we got to gush a little bit. I'm glad that we had so many great things to say and so many great moments to be had. And everybody, we really hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment, leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're up to date on all of our latest content. And we will see you in the next one.
Bye.